For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates. This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and on the Talking Point, our flagship show of the week, today we're looking at the 14th round of the India-China co-commander meeting. Our experts today are Lt Gen Narasimhan. He's a member of the National Security Advisory Board and the Director General of the MEA China Specific Think Tank, CCS. General Narasimhan, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you too. Thank you for inviting me on this show.
Our pleasure. And joining us is also Nitin Gokhale, founder and editor-in-chief both of StratNews Global and BharatShakti. Evening, Nitin.
Evening, Amitabh. This is a Friday evening, and I think a good discussion to have after 24 hours after the press release has come out about the talks. Good to be on the show.
General Narasimhan, straight away, just want to get your feedback or your assessment of how the 14th round went.
I think it has gone better than the previous one, definitely. That is one thing that comes out very clearly, because last time when the talks finished, I don't think both the sides actually gave a joint statement, and also the tenor of reporting after that, or the views that came out after that, were not a really very positive kind of an outlook. But I think the 14th round of talks have gone off better than that, definitely. And the joint statement also is more conducive to continuing these talks to find a better solution. I mean, to find a mutually acceptable solution to the problem that they are discussing. So to that extent, I think the 14th Corps Commander level talks have gone better than the previous one, definitely.
What would be the reasons for that, General? I mean, we saw, as you said, what happened last time, separate statements of both sides, blaming each other for positions. Also for the first time that these two co-commanders are meeting, right, General?
That is true. General Yang Lin, who came from the other side, also has taken over the South Xinjiang Military District, and so he is also the first time. And on our side also, GOC 14 Corps has just taken over General Anindya Sengupta. So both of them would have met for the first time. Notwithstanding that, I think the last time why the talks went a little on the tough side is basically because I think the previous representative who came from the Chinese side was actually the chief of staff of the Xinjiang Military District. He had not actually had the appointment as well as the mandate, maybe. That seems to have been the reason why things have probably gone a little south that time. But I think that seems to have come back on track, and both the sides have also agreed to hold the next Corps Commander level talks quickly. So that, I think, is another positive sign, and hopefully some more progress will be made in the next talks whenever they take place.
Nitin, Harshal Gore, one of our regular viewers, says, is there any point in talking to the Chinese at all? But that apart, before this round, you were pointing out how many analysts, including you, were feeling that the Chinese are constantly trying to change the goalposts. If you could elaborate on that.
Well, at least that's the feeling I got, because a day prior to the talks, 14th round of talks, the Chinese spokesperson, although this was the second time he was making a statement saying that let's have, instead of a day-to-day management, let's have something permanent to manage the border, or the LAC. They don't call it the LAC, of course, but manage the border. Seemed to have some kind of a different hint or a different approach that the Chinese wanted to adopt. And some of us felt, at least there were some comments in the amongst the analysts, that is it something that they are trying to impose on the talks on the lines of the code of conduct that they propose or they have in the South China Sea, which they have been pushing for. So that was a doubt, but the statement itself is quite positive, as General Narasimhan has pointed out, the joint statement after the talks. So we'll have to wait and watch, but we'll have to also watch the traps that the Chinese can suddenly spring on the interlocutors by saying that let's talk like this, because they don't normally change their language. And I thought this language was a little different than their earlier statements. That's why I said that.
General, your thoughts on that? I mean, goalposts are constantly, I'm sure, being trying to be changed by the Chinese. But this analogy of the language used there uh, and the South China Sea, how they go and take over islands and then look for a code of conduct.
I think we should not compare South China Sea and the line of actual control. I think these are two different things. And so we need to deal with them differently. That is the first point. The second point is the viewer's question, whether we should continue talking to the Chinese. Unless he has got a better option, I think the talking actually helps. And second thing is, what we generally feel is the moment the talks take place, everybody expects a result to come out. That is something which is, build up as per the talks, as the talks come nearby. But I just want to remind the viewers on only one thing, that please go back and think about Samudramchu, which took us 7 years to resolve, but still we resolved it. So the fact of the matter remains that unless we have a better option, I think the speaking to each other is always good. It builds up mutual trust and confidence over a period of time. Things go wrong once in a while on the line of actual control. We'll have to take it in that kind of view, and then continue to keep talking. And that is number one. Number two, the change in tone is also visible in other things. Like, for example, if you look at the spokesperson speaking, if you look at their foreign minister speaking, it seems to be that there seems to be thinking of working towards some kind of a solution to this to come up. The other thing is that, we have always been asking for clarification of the line of actual control, so that such face-offs, when they take place, they actually do not escalate into something like what they did in the summer of 2020. So I think maybe that is the next step that we need to look at, as to at least in the disputed areas, the sensitive areas, if we can at least get the line of actual control clarified, that will help us a lot. So in any case, we need to continue speaking, resolve these locations one by one. The PP15 is the next one. Thereafter, we need to look at resolving Depsang and the CNN junction. So I think that is the way to go forward. And the way that joint statement has come up, because joint statement means that both the sides have agreed on to what has been the text of that joint statement. So to that extent, I think it is a positive sign, and we need to look forward to the next Corps Commander level meeting.
Nitin, we are seeing that quote from the Chief of Army Staff General Narasimhan in his pre-Army Day press conference, when he was delineating exactly what General Narasimhan is talking about in terms of what we are looking at, in terms of resolved issues and unresolved issues. If you could, again, just flesh that out a little bit, and we'll have a couple of maps also up on the screen to explain.
Yeah, so ever since the first disengagement took place in February 2021, almost a year ago, that began the first step of disengagement was at the Kailash Range, when the armor element from both sides first withdrew. And then, of course, the finger 4 and finger 8, the area between those two fingers, were vacated by the Chinese. And it was decided that no side will patrol the areas there. So and then later in the next few rounds, the Gogra area was resolved. The face-off there was resolved. So now, as General Narasimhan has pointed out, 3 main areas remain: PP15, then Depsang, of course, and Demchok, or the CNN, as they call Charding Nilung Nala, south east Ladakh, or facing Aksai Chin. These 3 points remain, but it must be remembered that Depsang and CNN disputed points, or friction points, predate the current crisis, which started in May 2020. And as the Army Chief pointed out in a very detailed manner, he pointed out that eventually India is looking at what he calls the 3D formula. That is disengagement, de-escalation, and de-induction. That will likely take a long time, and we have the precedence of the Sundarangchu standoff in Arunachal Pradesh in the mid-80s, which got resolved only in the early 90s. So yes, we have to be patient, and I think this round has gone far better than anyone expected, given the experience of the 13th round. where there was a lot of acrimony perhaps, and both sides issued separate statements, and it just ended. I think it was the fastest round, the 13th round, in terms of time spent. That was also because I think the person who came from the Chinese side was not authorized, not even aware or not knowledgeable about the whole issue. So I think we have put that behind us, and I think the next round should come up with at least the PP15 resolution, if nothing more.
General, again, I mean, you've publicly in your comments and interviews have already expressed this. India needs, I mean, it's, all analysts are saying this about in the short, medium, and long term, we need real China experts to deal with this. But what I wanted to get your views were on is a question related to what Pradyuman B. Ravi is saying. It's not, of course, Professor Brahmachilani's patented analysis, but many analysts who talk about the PRC's negotiating style, and he mentions stalling, deception, pressure tactics, long-winded dialogues to test the opponent's positions accurately. How's India dealing with that, General?
I think we should also do the same. I'm not wanting to say that we should stall it. What I'm trying to say is, firstly, we should not come under any pressure. I don't think any of our people who are in the discussions come under any kind of pressure. One, two, we should not work to a timeline. The issue is that in the moment you start fixing up a timeline and you want to achieve something, then obviously in the negotiating style the changes come up. So don't fix up a timeline, but you should look at what you aim to achieve out of these negotiations, and then keep sticking to it, and then keep giving those arguments which need to be supporting that. So I'm sure over a period of 70 years of negotiations with the Chinese, I'm sure we also understand how things should be negotiated, and that I think is the way to go. And we also, in our way of negotiating, we also have a synergy between the civilian establishment and the military establishment, which is another plus for us, because both of them support each other, which is a good thing to happen. So that is something that again we can make use of. That gives us more institutional memory and everything else. So I think the negotiating styles are understood, and I think our side also is pitching in accordingly. Therefore, we should not be actually under any suspicion that we may not be able to negotiate better. I think we are good enough, and we understand how the negotiations need to be done.
Right, Nitin, specific questions here, and from Varun Pratap, who says, what are our chances of success in talks, say when it comes to the Depsang plains, given that China is in a favorable position, unlike in Pangong So?
Well, I don't know.
I think
People have to. Yeah, I think General Narasimhan can answer that, and then I'll come to it. No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize that the question was meant for you.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. See, a lot of people think that Chinese are at advantage in Depsang.
Exactly.
I don't think they are. If we are not able to go across the bottleneck, they are also not able to come across the bottleneck to their claim line. So to that extent, we have actually, I wouldn't say if not a better position, at least an equal position along with the Chinese. So that is the point I wanted to say. I leave it to Nitin to answer the rest.
No. So exactly the point I was trying to make, that while the face-off that is happening at bottleneck, it is exactly from both sides. If the Chinese don't allow us to go to the patrol points which are beyond the bottleneck, we also don't allow them to come to their line of perception, which is further down south and east, west, southwest of their where the face-off takes place. And in any case, the Chinese are much more sensitive about Depsang plains, because deep down somewhere they think that we have plans to threaten the G219, which is not so difficult a target if a sort of conflict was to occur, because it was ultimately the armor country. It's like a plain there, and the armor can be used there. So I think one of the sensitive points that the Chinese have on Depsang is also that we have increased our strength, our capability in those areas, and therefore the face-off at Depsang. I don't think we should worry too much about what is being written, and this whole issue about India having lost some 1,000 square kilometers in Depsang, and Depsang being threatened, and thereby even Siachen being threatened because of the Chinese presence there, is all exaggerated and I would say half-baked knowledge of people who do not know the topography or the kind of deployment people Indian Army has in that area.
And then you're talking about the topography, the terrain, and the change in infrastructure. And we have just, I think these are your tweets from maybe almost 2 years ago, when you're talking about one of the triggers for the Chinese movement.
Well, no. I had said that at that time, this is May 19th. Remember, the first clash had occurred at Finger 4 around May 4th or 5th. And
Yeah.
one of the triggers that time, the assessment was that the DSDBA road, India had announced that it had gone through, it was now operational, and there was a movement on that road, which is quite close to the LAC at some point near Shiok and near Galwan Shiok confluence. So this road has given India an enormous capability to transport troops or even reinforce the area. So that I think the Chinese were watching very closely. That road was in the making for almost 12, 13 years, and General Narasimhan can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But once it went through, I think it also showed how India was trying to catch up on the infrastructure game, which the Chinese are far ahead, were ahead for quite some time. But India is now really catching up fast, at least in on the interior areas of Ladakh, where I happened to travel again in October 2020 through the third axis to Ladakh from Himachal Pradesh via the Darcha Padam Nimu Leh road. And that actually gives India a lot of options, unlike earlier times when you had only two options or 1.5 options to reach Ladakh by road. I think that was one of the triggers that I had spoken about at that point in time.
Mhm. Yeah, General, on infrastructure, and Mohan Kumar Rajan, who says, what's the probability of China agreeing to withdraw? And if they do agree, how can they be trusted?
You see, there's a saying in Hindi, no? Zindagi ummeedon per kayam hai. So similarly, I think we need to look positive. And if from 4 different locations, out of 4 locations, if they're gone back in from 3, I think we should hope that we should actually think that they'll also go back from the 4th. That is one. Second thing is, sorry, the previous question I couldn't get it. It
That
came on the
if they,
screen.
even if they do withdraw, how can they be trusted? I mean, you have
Yeah. See,
agreements
even
over
in
the
my
years
earlier
that are
interviews,
now virtual toilet paper.
I agree. Even in my earlier interviews, which I had given in last year and last year, I had mentioned this: trust but verify. We need to trust them. If they accept that they will go back, I believe that they will go back, because as I have dealt with them as soldier to soldier, if they commit, they do it. So I expect that they'll go back. The other thing is that if we accept that they're going back and the agreement is done, then I think even then it is all mutually verifiable. Even in the earlier locations when they withdrew, the clause that was there was mutually verifiable kind of disengagement is what we are talking about. So obviously we need to verify, we need to keep monitoring those areas so that there are no changes that take place subsequently. Those things are with us and we need to do that. So I think we need to trust, but also we need to continue to verify.
Nitin, and
And
again,
if I can add,
go ahead.
Amitabh, just one this thing. No, I think again, General Narasimhan can sort of verify that or at least confirm. This is the disengagement agreement in February 2021 was perhaps sort of in a written form, and at the local level, it was said that time by some people that it was the first time that this was put down on paper, the kind of disengagement. Is that correct, General Narasimhan, or is something that happens regularly?
Even earlier also it could have happened. We don't know, actually speaking. There are speculations on that. But whichever way it is, there will be some kind of commitment given from both the sides as to how the disengagement should take place. And that we should trust. I mean, without that, then you can't move forward in any case. So you need to
Yeah.
trust that, but verify whether this disengagement has taken place, whether there are any further modifications are being done to those areas. Those things we need to continue to keep monitoring and verifying.
Sure.
Right, Nitin. Again, when you're talking about infrastructure, and you've reported from both the areas, both in Ladakh and in the northeast, in Arunachal Pradesh as well, where you've seen not just of late, but over 20 years, a huge change.
True. Of course, I mean, the next trip was to Arunachal, eastern Arunachal Pradesh, in fact, called in the army parlance RALP, rest of Arunachal Pradesh, which actually should be most of Arunachal Pradesh. But notwithstanding that, I had gone to Walong in 1999 and I went there again in 2021. So the change is enormous. I mean, it just hits you if you have traveled by road. Earlier, traveling to Walong from, say, Tinsukia or Dibrugarh used to mean that you would get on to the elephant back if the rivers are in spate, then get on to a ferry, then get on to small boats, and then drive up from Haileong to Walong and Kibitu. Today there is a bridge on the rivers there, and also the roads are superb now, as well as the broadening of all the access points has meant that India's infrastructure game is now really under control. And of course, it can be improved further. But India has also moved forward troops. I mean, brigades which were in Lohitpur have now gone to Walong, and the brigade which was in Walong has gone up to Kibitu, which is the last point near the LAC. Therefore, I think India also realizes, and I think the Chinese also see it regularly. This is Vijayanagar, of course, what you're seeing, and these. I went to Anini, I went to Vijayanagar, went to Walong, I went to Kibitu. So all these places are now well connected. There is proper shelter. The Air Force and the Army are working in great tandem. Not that they didn't work earlier, but there are enormous infrastructure projects that are still on, and I think that itself gives the confidence to the troops deployed there that they will have a backup, they will have reinforcements, and they can take on whatever challenges come their way, which wasn't the case, I would say, 20 years ago. We were very thin on the ground, but today I think we have improved at least 50 to 60% from what it was. I mean, taking the guns, artillery guns like M777, underslung the helicopters or the Chinooks, actually gives another dimension to India's capability there. As you can see, this operation, the Chinooks are sort of deployed there to carry these guns from one location to the other. There is a artillery brigade which has been deployed there. So many improvements have come, and I think that's something that we should be really satisfied about. Of course, there's always scope for improvement.
General, if you want to say something on the northeast front, and just link to that is what China has been doing of late. And Paramita Roy asks, claims China claims that Arunachal Pradesh is their territory. What strategy is India taking so far to counter their claim? We've seen what the Ministry of External Affairs said to those 15 places being renamed, of course.
One thing before General Narasimhan starts, he has commanded the corps there, the 3 corps, which looks after the rest of Arunachal Pradesh. So he is nobody better than him to know.
You see, what Nitin says is absolutely right. You know, what we saw 15, 20. In fact, I have served extensively in the Northeast. More than 12 years I spent my life there. And lastly, when I commanded the corps, this entire areas which Nitin talked about were all part of my responsibility at that time. So the issue is that we suffer from two things when we want to do infrastructure development. One is the terrain itself. The terrain is so treacherous in those areas. The making of infrastructure takes a lot of time and effort. That is one thing. Second thing is the various kind of procedures that we were following earlier have now lot more improved than what it was earlier. So it is easier for us to make those infrastructure that was very desperately needed. So what Nitin said is right. We have improved quite a bit, but then we can't rest on our laurels. We need to do whatever more needs to be done. That we need to constantly keep doing that infrastructure development, whatever is required to be done there. And all those areas, if you look at them, they're all divided into deep, narrow valleys. You know, each river makes a short valley, and those valleys are the ones you need to define. It is extremely difficult areas to deal with. But one thing I can tell all your readers and listeners, whosoever is listening, be just confident of your troops. I would say that they are the best in the world. they seek so much less from you and they give you so much more. So you can't find better troops than Indian troops. And I think that is the strength that we have to actually cater for any kind of adverse kind of reaction that could come from across. So we need to be confident of that. Infrastructure needs to continue, and then we need to keep doing whatever we need to build our capability in terms of equipment, in terms of modernization, in terms of surveillance. Those things we need to continue to do so that we are in a better position.
Nitin, on Arunachal Pradesh, how the I beg your pardon, the Chinese tried to rename 15 places. There was an official response, which I think was looking at how the MEA normally responds, was quite stern. But also reports which are constantly coming up of different areas. I mean, now it's villages along the disputed Bhutan-China border as well.
Well, yes, I think, see, the Chinese have now adopted a strategy of those dual use villages. They're something that they're building for the past at least 5 to 6 years, where they want to use them for both military and civil purposes. And they are pushing the envelope in the sense that even in disputed areas like Longju, for instance, in Arunachal Pradesh, they have improved their their infrastructure and built some villages there. Bhutan is a different cup of tea. They know that Chumbi Valley is important for them. They need some depth there, and they've been putting pressure on Bhutan. Again, General Narasimhan has served in 17 Div in Gangtok. He would know in Nathula also. He was a brigade commander. The Chinese are playing the game of putting the pressure on the Bhutanese because they know that Bhutanese want, or the Bhutan government is a little sensitive about the areas in the north of Bhutan, that is, where there are disputed areas. They want to swap or tell the Bhutanese that you can keep them and give us the western Bhutan-China border areas so that they get the depth in the Chumbi Valley, which of course has ramifications for India's deployments and India's security. But again, that's only that much one can do with Bhutan and tell them or request them to withstand the pressure. But beyond, and there are certain other ramifications there which will be known to only the Bhutanese and the Indian interlocutors. But it is a sensitive area, certainly. I agree on that. But General Narasimhan will have more information.
General,
See,
if you want
these
to
are
add.
part of this. These are part of 628 villages which the Chinese were to build as part of something known as Xiaokang. Xiaokang is actually what it means is to develop a moderately well-off society in an all-round way. That is typically the term of Xiaokang that means. As part of that project, they have taken up approximately 628 villages to be built along the line of actual control. But out of that, approximately 200 of them are along the line of actual control, 200 plus, give or take a little bit. But the remainder is also in the depth areas. So you find a combination of villages coming up to develop the areas which have been remote earlier so that people can be moved there and given some kind of facilities. That is not to say that, some of them have come up in the disputed areas, like the one in the Longju area. So that is where the problem comes up. So we need to be careful on such villages which come up in disputed areas. That is the one that we need to be looking at. In the depth areas, what they do and how they develop the villages is up to them. Either their area, they want to develop that villages, that is up to them. But these areas along the line of actual control and the disputed areas is something that we need to be looking at. The second thing is, on the Bhutan issue, which Nitin was talking about, right from earlier days, there have been border dispute between Bhutan and China. They've already held a 24 round of talks again in the border on the border issue. And recently, they have also signed a 3-step process to resolve the boundary issue. So this is something that has been going on for a period of time. I think they have taken a call to probably move ahead and do something to resolve the boundary issue. But we also have almost the same 3-step process with the Chinese, which we are starting from 2003 onward, what we have been doing. So the issue that comes up is very simple, that you need to be careful about the areas in which the villages which are coming up in the areas that are disputed and sensitive. In the depth areas, what they do is their business. And so we don't have to really look into it. How these villages are going to be used is something that we need to be constantly watching and monitoring so that, we can take any kind of action that is required to be taken at that time.
Nitin, our capabilities, like you've been talking about on the ground, both military and infrastructure, all along the LAC, from across all sectors. But in terms of information warfare, well, I wouldn't say India should be. Maybe they should. Disinformation, misinformation, Psy Ops. That's a capability that we have to really build up, right?
I think we are catching up on that too. The Chinese have used this; they have it in their doctrine. It's been inbuilt in their, the war fighting or the doctrines that they have. The white papers speak about it for some time. Information warfare, the way they use the foreign media rather than their own media, and the kind of berserk statements sometimes come out. If you recall in 2017 when the Dolam crisis was on, they went to the extent of saying India will face the same music or same situation as in 1962. They dug up some of the People's Daily editorials. They dug up, they wrote about how India will be decimated again like 1962. So they employ the three-step or the three warfare strategy: legal, information warfare, and also using some of the legal treaties. That is what the international treaties are. And they try to sort of put pressure on the adversary. I think India has again learned the lessons and have absorbed those lessons. And also, therefore, if you see, now the military officers are leading the negotiations. They have also learned over the years there is institutional memory. More and more specialization is happening in the Indian military, and of course, there's always been specialization in the MEA. So I think all that is needed now is to have a centralized or a coordinated information or perception management counter to the Chinese efforts and the Chinese, the way they use their media or the foreign media. But we being a different society, a democratic society, a democratic system, will always have our limitations, unlike the Chinese, who can do and have uniform policies which can be enforced or which can be done together. So, but we have our strengths, which the Chinese will never realize. And they used to be very afraid, and they used to talk in the official discussions about the Indian media. The why that Indian media that can't be reined in by the Indian officials was always a refrain in the earlier days, if I remember correctly. But they will never understand the way we operate in India, and I think we should play to that strength rather than join the game as the rules of the game that they impose or try to impose in the information or the influence operation space. So I think that is where we have to play to our strength of an open and democratic society.
General Narasimhan, your assessment of the internal dynamics in China, Xi Jinping, the Congress, which of course will endorse his lifetime term, but how do you see that affecting specifically India-China ties?
You see, a lot of people did talk about why this 2020 incidents happened. One of the reasons that was talked about by many of the analysts is that he was trying to divert the internal issues. He had a lot of internal issues, and to divert the attention of the people, he did this. So I'm not into all those things. What I'm trying to say is China is a very big country. It will have its own internal issues, its own internal problems, and the leaders of that country will also face problems like our leaders face. Our country is also a large country. It has got n number of issues that needs to be dealt with by the leadership. So yeah, I'm sure he also will be having the same kind of issues. Mr. Xi Jinping also will have the same kind of issues to deal with. So what I am trying to say is there are problems which will be there in any country. Similarly, China will also have a lot of internal issues that needs to be dealt with. There may be a political kind of issue that will come up this year. The party congress is going to take place in October, and that is going to be a major event to decide on the next level of leadership. It is almost given that Mr. Xi Jinping will continue to go through the third term because he has got his term limits for the president waived. President and the vice president waived. So he'll go through the third term, but his leadership, which is of the Politburo Standing Committee of 7 people, will see a churn and change. So that is going to take place, and that is going to actually work in the minds of a lot of people in China in the next coming 8 to 9 months. So this is something that will happen. The second thing is economically, Again, a lot of actions have been taken, as we all have read. The major companies have been dealt with, and then the education companies, the gaming companies, whole lot of them are actually being put on some kind of a notice. So you find the implications of those will be telling on the people, in the sense that the common man is expected to benefit out of all these actions that have been taken by Mr. Xi Jinping. So all these things are going to evolve for the next 8 to 9 months before the next party congress comes up. And that party congress is going to be a huge event that will decide on the leadership for the next 5 years. And that is going to be a major event that we need to keep watching. Other than that, like any country, political opposition and other things will be there. I'm sure at the moment we see that Mr. Xi Jinping has got his place intact, and then he will continue to do whatever he is expecting to do in the coming months.
Coming months, Nitin, this is the second winter that troops are face to face with each other, and dialogue is continuing. What do you see? How do you see it moving forward in the year, Nitin?
Well, yeah, this is unprecedented. I mean, such large number of troops in the winters being deployed at those altitudes and that weather is unprecedented on both sides. I mean, India has had the experience of deployments in Siachen, even in Ladakh, they have stayed back, and of course in Kargil area where the temperatures can be similarly daunting. But the fact is that to sustain such large body of troops, you require great logistics, which I think India proved in 2020 and 2021 that it can sort of sustain such large number of troops. Its logistics operations are now quite efficient, and in fact can be sort of taken to the next level when required. And I think if you look at the infrastructure, I've always maintained in the last couple of years that China has actually done us a favor. What we would have done in the next 5 years or 7 years in a normal course of what India would have done in terms of building infrastructure, slowly raising the capability, India has been forced to sort of telescope that timeline in getting the infrastructure in place, getting more acclimatized troops in that area. So India actually has been done a favor by China, I would say, by doing what they did in 2020, because that is something we wouldn't have done so fast. Yes, there are enormous strain and the wear and tear on the equipment. The men go through, officers and men go through a lot of problems initially. But I think India has proved time and again that the troops, like General Narasimhan said, are the best in the world. They can adapt and adopt any of the situations, adapt to and adopt new systems or necessary adjustments that they can do. So I think we are quite well off. I think it's the Chinese who must be facing more problems than the Indians, but even they are fast learners. Let's not underestimate the Chinese troops or the Chinese army by saying that they haven't had the experience, because they have proved in the past few years, at least in 2 decades, that they learn very fast in all respects, not just in the military, but in all respects. And therefore, we must never underestimate them. But India is in a great position, as the army chief said, that if there were to be a conflict, we will come out victorious. We know the Indian troops are capable of doing what they did or have done in the past so many years, for so many decades, I would say. So I think there we are okay. But yes, unprecedented situation of being deployed through the second winter on the Ladakh plateau or the Siachen plateau.
General Rishikaran wants to know, can we do more
I'll just,
quid pro
I had that.
like
I
Kailash
read
Range?
that question. In addition to what Nitin said, let me add only 30 seconds. I'm from infantry, and I am from the Madras regiment, and the troops are from south, where it is absolutely warm. Okay, but you must see the way that these boys adjust themselves to all this high altitude, Siachen and everything else. It's amazing. And even in those heights, even in those cold climate, that Thambi cannot live without a bath. He will still have a bath in that cold climate without even having a hesitation. So our troops are great. They will definitely hold the ground when it is required to be held, and so that is nothing to be worried about. The point which Nitin said about getting into those areas, living for longer period of time, we are used to it. So that is something that we can live with. There is extra effort that needs to be made to maintain those troops, etc. That I think has been taken care of. As far as the question which came up on the boxes, that it is like this. These are in the operational domain. That is our job. When we command formations, when we command corps, division, brigade, etc. These are the things that we keep talking about. I would just like to say that be rest assured that those things are being catered for in the planning. That's what I'll say. Beyond that, it should not be correct to say in the open forum.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But General, are the Chinese really interested in resolving the LAC, the border issue, or do they want to keep it boiling for a long period of time in their larger strategic interest to keep India on its, focused just on this area?
See, this question keeps coming to me whenever I go for various talks, etc. This question keeps coming to me. Please understand, this boundary issues has been a very, very complicated issue. That is something that we need to understand. And it has also been actually, we are also emotionally attached to this boundary because of the 62 war and everything else. So we need to take a rational view of this. That is number one. Number two is, it is not the question of, say, somebody wanting to stall this. So both the sides are negotiating. Both the sides will have their own positions, and each position needs to be negotiated very, very in a detailed manner. It takes time. It is not going to be easy. So, and the border is also not a very short border. It is 3,488 kilometers of border you need to deal with. So it is something which will take time. That is something that we need to understand. But in the meanwhile, we need to accept that both the sides should maintain peace and tranquility along the line of actual control to facilitate that process. That is one. The second thing is, in spite of all this, the areas in which we actually get into face-off, there are only a few. Out of this 3,488 kilometers, there are only 25, 30 areas in which we have these issues. In these areas, at least, if we understand each other's position on the line of actual control, the face-offs can actually be reduced. That is the second point. The third point is, all the protocols and standard operating procedure that we have signed so far have proved ineffective after the summer of 2020. So we need to look at more effective ways of managing this. So that is the third process that we need to be looking at, to bring in more provisions to maintain those SOPs and maintain the peace and tranquility along the line of actual control. That process also, I'm sure, is on. So these are the things that we need to look at. It is not the question of somebody wanting to stall or somebody not wanting to stall. It is a difficult process which will take time, and we need to understand.
General S.N. Narasimhan, very aptly put
Amitabh,
there. And Nitin, you want to say
just
something?
1 minute on a lighter note. I just want to end on a lighter note. What General Narasimhan said about troops from South India adjusting to the climate, the cold climate and the altitude, I can relate to it because once, about nearly 15 years ago, when I was in Tawang and beyond near Bumla, there was a Madras battalion posted there. At 8 o'clock in the morning, at nearly 16,000 feet, they fed us with medu vada and sambar and chutney. They can't do without it at that altitude either. In fact, I've done what we call the piece to camera, saying at 16,000 feet, I am having a medu vada in Tawang. So those are our troops, happy, adjustable, adapting to the situation. So I think we should rest assured about what the troops will do if the balloon goes up. I just wanted to flag that.
Absolutely. Great note to end there. Nitin and General Narasimhan, again, appreciate your time. I just want to put up a few comments appreciating both of you. Paramita Roy says, so nice to hear the experts. We know very less about Indo-China conflicts. We're taking more interest in Pakistan. I think more discussions should happen on this. Sai Prasad Vishwanathan, RESPECT for this great session. Nitin, General Narasimhan, myth-busting China
And you, of course.
propaganda. I just part of the furniture. And Digital Night Library, who says your team always provides high-quality, unbiased conversations. Your team should reach the government for partnership. Anyway, that's another thing. You deserve to be India's BBC if you maintain this quality. Anyway,
Okay.
thanks to all our viewers for those comments and your engagement. General Narasimhan, again, thank you so much, and Nitin as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for getting me on the show. Thank you very much.
The pleasure was all ours. And viewers, thank you for your comments and suggestions and participation in this live Q&A with General Narasimhan and Nitin Gokhale. Do keep those comments coming. like this video and share the link if you feel other people in your professional and personal lives would also like to watch this. To also follow and subscribe our YouTube channel. This is Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.